So, what do we want to do for the meantime?
Well,
Could do this. Okay. Joe Scott video while I eat. Space is way scarier than you think. Alright. I shall return.
On February 7th, 1984, 317 miles above Earth, Bruce McCandless pushed away from the space shuttle and into the history books, taking the largest first step in human history. While Neil Armstrong's small step was a giant leap for mankind, Bruce McCandless's first test of the Manned Maneuvering Unit was a plunge into infinity. Space is big. In size, obviously, but also in the way that it stirs our imaginations. The very concept of nothing is hard to fully process. And if space is anything, it's a whole lot of nothing. Potentially infinite nothingness. But at the same time, teeming with monstrous structures and energies beyond human comprehension. Filaments made up of thousands of clusters of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. Areas of space so dense and massive that the rules of physics entirely break down. And yet, when we look outside, we only see the very closest stars. All the rest of it is just out there, hidden in the endless darkness, like an eldritch horror. And despite that, or maybe because of it, we feel inexplicably drawn to it. From our earliest days, we explored the infinite darkness, looking for meaning. We used the stars to navigate, to guide our planting of crops. We imprinted our gods and mythologies into the patterns we saw in them. We may not have known what was out there, but we knew it was important. We invented eye-enhancing telescopes that reached through the darkness and found monstrous worlds we didn't even know existed. And now in the modern era, we've taken our first tentative steps into that void by packaging ourselves in suits and machines that simulate the conditions on Earth. And we can't survive in any of it. Our world, in this perspective, is a microscopic oasis in a never-ending inky void, as insignificant to the rest of the universe as a bacterium floating in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Astrophobia is the fear of space, or astronomical objects. Astro from the Greek astron, meaning star, and phobia from the Greek phobos, meaning fear. So technically, astrophobia is the fear of stars, but we include space and celestial objects as well. Objects like, say, the Mars moon Phobos. We literally have an object in the solar system named Fear. If someone from the city who rarely sees stars goes to the country or dark sky territory, they might find the immensity of a fully lit night sky to be overwhelming, even nerve-rattling. We might say that person has a touch of astrophobia. A believer in astrology might become nervous in the days when Mercury goes into retrograde. This could be considered astrophobia. Or the old idea that people go mad under a full moon, turning them into lunatics. That's astrophobia. In the ancient times, comets were thought to be harbingers of disaster. In fact, that's where the word comes from, dis-aster, bad star. But there's another type of astrophobia, one that's not specific to an object or a superstition, but something much deeper, a kind of cosmic existentialism. Have you ever laid in the grass on a clear night and just took in the sky? Just let it wash over you and kind of become a part of it. A strange sensation starts to come over you, that you're not actually looking up, you're looking down. Below you is a drop into an infinite void, and the only thing keeping you from falling is the fact that you're stuck to the ground by gravity. This shift in perspective is a bit of a transformative experience, and I recommend everybody to have it at some point in their lives. Certain chemicals can help that along. Just saying. But that perspective is a bit more accurate. In space, there really is no up. There is no down. It's just out. In all directions. Forever. And the only thing keeping you from falling into
It
it
wasn't
is
the
this
food that I thought
invisible
there was
force
food
called
of.
gravity.
So I had to change what
Really
food I'm
understand.
getting.
And it's a good thing because if you were to
So
ever go
originally
out
I
any of
didn't have
those
enough
forever
time to
directions,
watch the
you'd be dead after
Sanderson
5 miles.
lecture. Now we
That's it.
do have enough time to watch
That
the
is as
Sanderson
far as a
lecture.
human can
Problem
go
is,
in that direction
we don't have
before
enough
they
time to
can't
watch the
breathe
Sanderson
anymore.
lecture and
5
this.
miles, 8 kilometers.
But
You could
that's
walk that
okay.
distance in a little over an hour. That's nothing. And everything beyond
It's
that
actually fucking
will kill
cold
you.
in here. Holy shit.
Fear of space indeed. We
This is
exist
new.
on a
This is
tiny
October.
sliver of space.
It's October. What
On
do
the
you
surface of a
expect?
tiny planet. And even in that sliver, we can only survive on land, which is only 29% of the total surface. And even on that land, only 43% of it is habitable. The rest will kill you with oppressive heat, extreme cold, and choking forests. Earth can kill you in a million different ways. You can dehydrate, drown, fall off a cliff, get hit by lightning, consumed by fire, consumed by a
Oh, if
lion,
I turn the music
or
off,
tiger,
I'm so
or
retarded.
bear. You could eat the wrong berry, or pet the wrong snake, or get bitten by the wrong bug, or go to Australia. You could get blown up by a volcano, or breathe a toxic gas, catch a disease from a rat, or have a small number of blood cells clot up and travel to your brain, or just wait long enough. One way or the other, the Earth always wins. Nobody has ever survived Earth, and yet it's the only place in our solar system we can survive. If you teleported to the surface of Mercury, you would lose consciousness within 20 seconds for lack of oxygen. And in the vacuum of space, your skin would boil as gases in your blood flash into bubbles, like a carbonated soda. If you were teleported to the sun side, your body would bake on the 800-degree surface. If you're on the shadow side, it's immediate frostbite at negative 290 degrees. If you went to the surface of Venus, you wouldn't have time to suffocate from the lack of oxygen because you would immediately burst into flame from the 867-degree air temperature, while simultaneously being crushed by an atmospheric pressure 92 times higher than here on Earth. It would basically be like the Titan submersible, but on fire.
Damn.
On Mars, you might have a relatively warm day, but you'd still suffocate. There's only 1% of our air pressure there, and almost none of it is oxygen. So you'd get the worst case of the bends imaginable, and then pass out. Teleporting to the surface of Jupiter would be difficult because there's no real surface on Jupiter. Just thick atmosphere that gets thicker as you go down until it turns into liquids and solids and states of matter we don't even understand. You would basically just fall until you were crushed into a diamond. Somewhat the same thing on Saturn, but breathing the ammonia clouds would scorch your lungs first. Neptune and Uranus are so far away from the sun that the hydrogen atmosphere freezes solid. That's why they're called ice giants, which is what you would be within seconds of going there. At negative 371 degrees, your body doesn't freeze, it vitrifies. It basically turns into glass. Our sense of scale about space is completely skewed because you can't really image it. To show it remotely at scale, you wouldn't really be able to see anything. It takes 8 minutes for light to travel from the sun to the Earth. It takes light about 8 hours to reach the outer edge of the Kuiper Belt and leave our solar system. So one light day is 3 times longer than the radius of our solar system. One light year is 365 times that long. Our closest star is 2.24 light years away. Polaris is around 450 light years away. The farthest star that you can see with the naked eye is V762 Cassiopeia, a supergiant star approximately 16,000 light years away. While we're looking at the Milky Way, we sit about halfway between the center and the edge. If we went to the edge, it would be 25 to 28,000 light years, making the radius of the Milky Way about 50,000 light years, roughly 100,000 all the way across. These distances are ridiculous, but that's nothing compared to the distance between galaxies. The closest galaxy is Andromeda, which is 2.5 million light years away, 25 times the length of our galaxy. We're part of the local group of galaxies, roughly 10 million light years across. And that is inside the Virgo supercluster, which contains 100 galaxy clusters and made up of 10,000 galaxies, spanning 110 million light years. And that is part of the Laniakea supercluster, including the Virgo supercluster and the Hydra Centaurus supercluster, that are all flowing toward a region known as the Great Attractor. It's 500 million light years across. Laniakea is one of the superclusters that makes up the Pisces-Cetus supercluster complex. It's a galaxy filament a billion light years long. At this scale, the cosmos breaks down into filaments and voids, including the Boötes void, which is 300 million light years across. Just pure emptiness. Beyond this is the cosmic web, which is where our numbers break down. All told, the observable universe is agreed to be about 93 billion light years across. Given the absurd scale that we're dealing with, one can only assume that the universe is filled with billions, even trillions of different planets harboring life. If there is even a millionth of a percentage chance that life could evolve in another star system, the number would still be, well, astronomical. Arthur C. Clarke once said, quote, "Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying."
Yup.
If the universe is teeming with life, that would mean that it's filled with potential hidden threats all around us. But it would also mean that we are not special. We do not have some privileged place in the universe. We are not the universe experiencing itself. We're just a really weird fluke of organic chemistry that happens from time to time, devoid of meaning and purpose. If there's no life outside of Earth, then we are truly alone, floating in an infinite void, which would be, in the words of Ellie Arroway, a huge waste of space.
Yup.
It's such a waste of space, it feels unreal. Perhaps a simulation? What if this really is just a massive game that creates itself as we explore the virtual universe? The further out we look, the more we see. When Hubble took its deep field photo, pointing at a tiny dark patch of sky and finding thousands of galaxies, maybe those galaxies literally didn't exist until we looked there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Concept
the
of consciousness
structure of the universe
creating.
didn't exist until we figured out how to map the cosmic microwave background radiation. Maybe you and I are just ones and zeros, and what we experience as consciousness is just a sim program, just existing in a game. This is a popular theory, if maybe a little bananas. A belief in it is understandable, considering the equally baffling absurdity of the physical universe.
Yep.
There is a more elegant solution, though. One that allows for a universe teeming with life, but simultaneously seemingly void of life. But it's no less existentially terrifying. The term Great Filter speaks to the idea that basic life like single-cell bacteria might be common, but intelligent life encounters barriers that prevent it from existing everywhere. Some think the Great Filter occurs before intelligent life. For example, the evolution from single-celled organisms to multicellular organisms, that might be a Great Filter. After all, the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and single-cell life began relatively early, some believe around 500 million years. But it wasn't until 1.6 billion years ago that multicellular life arose on Earth, meaning it took 2.5 billion years for life to make that jump. Perhaps this is such a remarkably rare event that it could be considered a Great Filter. Others suggest the Great Filter is something that still awaits us, that it occurs after intelligence evolves.
Like
Maybe
in
because
Mass
of a
Effect, it's the
cataclysmic
fucking
cosmic event, the death of their star. Maybe it's
Reapers.
a predatory alien civilization engaging in dark forest gamesmanship. Or maybe because intelligent civilizations inevitably drain their own resources and wipe themselves out. Perhaps intelligence isn't the ultimate goal of evolution, but a mutation of it, a kind of cancer, a metastasis that requires an unsustainable consumption of resources that inevitably dies out. All of this is an overdramatic way of saying that maybe intelligent civilizations have a time limit. And if there's anything as absurd as the space in the universe, it's the time of the universe. The two are fundamentally linked after all. The average lifetime of a species here on Earth is between 5 and 10 million years. Intelligent life might fare better, or it might fare worse, but we can give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say we last 10 million years. In the 13.8 billion year history of the universe, that is a line so thin, you can barely see it on the screen. Even if life was common, even if intelligent life were common, even if every single star system in the universe were capable of creating intelligent life at some point before that star system dies out, it is entirely plausible that all of those civilizations rose, conquered, and ended at different windows in the universe, and never knew that any of the others ever existed.
Mm-hmm.
We, in our tiny, inconsequential oasis of the universe, are only here for a fleeting amount of time. And all we have is each other against the vast, consuming darkness. On Valentine's Day in 1990, the Voyager 1 spacecraft, well past the orbit of Neptune at this point, took one last look back toward the inner solar system and snapped a picture. This picture held no scientific value. In it, there was nothing we could learn that we didn't already know. But in this photo, Voyager captured Earth from over 6 billion kilometers away, making it look like only a cluster of blue pixels. Carl Sagan championed this photo and called it the pale blue dot. It is, in a sense, the most accurate photo of our species ever taken. In Carl's words, "From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here.
Intelligent life
That's
takes a
home.
little time to form
That's
once
us.
the conditions are
On
correct.
it, everyone you
It took
love,
4.5
everyone you
billion
know,
years for
everyone
life
you
to
ever
form
heard
here,
of,
but the
every
time
human
from
being who
single
ever
cell
was,
life
lived out
complex
their
is
lives.
almost instant.
The aggregate of our joy and suffering,
It's having a
thousands of
planet in the
confident
correct
religions,
situation long enough for
ideologies,
that to
and
happen
economic
is a real
doctrines,
trick.
every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors so that, in glory and triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are all challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit, yes. Settle, not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
First step to colonize Mars
Space
is to
is
dome
scary.
a crater.
And yet, we are drawn to it.
Yup.
It's the ultimate call of the void. And with a renewed interest in colonizing the moon and new telescopes like the Vera Rubin telescope, we seek to expand our reach into the abyss. And maybe we'll get there. Maybe we'll wise up and outlive our species' life expectancy. Maybe we'll expand through the cosmos and find new homes on other worlds near other stars. Because in an infinite universe, anything's possible. The expansive scale of our universe is beyond comprehension, but your comprehension skills are not beyond expanding when you dive into the scientific thinking course on Brilliant.org.
Oh, alright, that's the ad. Okay, so I gotta go flip my food, but we got one more video. Robot of your nightmares.
Robots and AI and music and dogs and cats. All typical stuff for a lightning round video.
Let's do it.
Hey
When you put a telescope on the dark side of the moon, it will have far less light pollution to fight. The problem with that is then we would need satellites in orbit so that we could get the signal to come back to Earth. So, getting satellite, and then you'd have to have enough satellites that you could get like enough telemetry at enough time. Like I actually watched a video on that, and like the things that you would have to do to have like a full link to the dark side of the moon without having the other side of the moon set up.
Sun damage that I've received. It's looking a lot better now, actually, than it was just a couple of days ago. But I did a video on my TMI channel if you want to go check it out. So you're going to see this for a few videos. Now you know what's up. All right, first question goes to Brian Beswick. He asked, "What's your thoughts on the proto-clones from Clone Robotics?" Home Robotics. I don't think I'm familiar with them. Here, let me take a look. Don't like that. Okay, so the first thing that I notice here is that like all of their videos that they share are like intentionally creepy. Like it's got creepy lighting, creepy music. Holy hell, bro. Definitely gets your attention though, which I don't know, maybe you need to do these days because there's a lot of like humanoid robots in production right now. Maybe that's what you gotta do to get attention. Also, you can't not
Radio
make
equipment,
comparison
solar
to what's
panels, would be on the light side,
it seems
cable
as if
connects the
these clone
telescope, rather
robots,
pricey to set
apart
up,
is
would
that
be a
instead
very
of
good
using,
spot for a telescope.
like,
Oh, it would.
mechanical actuators and
But yeah, there's like,
whatnot, they
it would
use
actually cost less
So
money to
coming
have
as a
like
video
1,000
that, like, some engineers are working on, like,
satellites
robots
orbiting the
that use
moon than it
low
would to
pressure,
like build a
to move
connection
these, like,
station
images and
between the
stuff. And at
far
the time,
side
it
of the
was
moon
mostly,
and the
like,
light side of the
little
moon, even if it
spiders
was just
and,
on the
you know,
corners where we could
octopodes
get the
kinda thing.
signal.
They use tentacles to kind
At
of
least
grab
that's what the video went
but
through.
This is like
If I'm remembering
human scale.
correctly.
Honestly, there's not a ton of
It might even been a Joe
information
Scott
about these
video.
guys. I did find an interview with the CEO. I'll link it down below. But what I can gather from the interview that I saw is that they're saying that the advantage of using hydraulics is, well, first of all, it works more like the human body and how our muscles work. And their argument seems to be that it's more energy efficient because instead of powering dozens of motors and actuators and whatnot, it's just being managed by like a pump, a water pump in the torso. So it looks like they developed a material that acts like normal muscle tissue that they call myofiber. They even claim to have a layer of like synthetic fat under the skin to give it a more like lifelike feel. So they started by working on hands a few years back and getting the hands to work just right, trying to get it as close to the dexterity of the human hand as possible. They then added a torso and a head, and it looks like just recently they added the lower half of the body. It can't stand yet though. It looks like that's their next big milestone that they're trying to reach, and then walking, obviously. So the general argument for humanoid robots is that, you know, we built our spaces around the human form, and having a robot that fits that human form will more, you know, easily fit into our current spaces that we use. That's the argument anyway. Now, is this hydraulic system actually more efficient and more useful? I don't know. I mean, I guess time will tell. Now, where this does get a little weird is that ultimately, according to the CEO, what they're really trying to do, the ultimate goal, is to actually create clones of people. Like you would actually get a robot made to look just like you, and like mirror your behavior and stuff like that. By the way, that is exactly a Black Mirror episode. They did a Black Mirror episode on that exactly. Methinks the Uncanny Valley problem is gonna get super real for this. They go in that direction.
Yeah.
I will say the videos of the hands look pretty impressive.
Even with a fiber
though
optic
I've been
connection
impressed
for
with
the
some of
data, you'd
the
still
hands
need to
that
have a
they've
power
done
connection. So
as
yeah,
well.
unless you're going to put a
That's
nuclear
cool.
power plant on the
I
dark
think it'll
side,
be
it probably
interesting
can't
when
happen
they,
at all.
Whoever they is, like, cracks the
Talking one
software
that runs
makes
off
these
radiation,
humanoid
not
robots,
one that
like,
makes it.
autonomous and
Yeah.
useful.
I'm sure the
You know, once that
Chinese will do
software
it,
is
though.
cracked, then it can be applied to all kinds of hardware platforms, and yeah, we'll see which ones, you know, break down the least. I think that's basically what it's going to come down to, which ones require the least maintenance. And I really don't know which one would break down the fastest, the hydraulic and mechanical robots, like which one would require the most maintenance and whatnot. I imagine the hydraulic ones would be messier. You know, if something went wrong, your robot's just leaking everywhere. Of course, mechanical robots require oil, and that can leak too. And it's funny because my brain immediately goes to like space applications for some reason, because like robots seem to be the most useful.
What about when
in
the
extreme
sun
environments
gets
where our
to the
fragile
dark
human
side?
bodies that are only designed for
Do
a
you
specific
just
environment,
move stuff or
you
wait
know,
till
can
at
work
nighttime
in,
again?
and mechanical robots can work in much more extreme conditions. I don't think this would apply to that as well. This really seems to be more
You would
like
probably
a,
just
like a
close the
home
shutters on the
companion or an
telescope
assistant, rather than,
for that
say,
like
a
brief
workforce in a
period of
factory or a
time.
warehouse or something.
That would be my guess.
So it's
Like,
it's
that's
super creepy.
Kind of what we do
And it might get more
here.
creepy as
Or,
they try to
like,
make it
pointed
more
in a
like
different
person
direction.
and make it look like a person, Uncanny Valley and all that. I don't know. It's
That would be my
interesting.
thought.
You guys tell me what you think in the comments. Next up, Rafe Zero Humor Singer asked, how did standard tuning for stringed instruments come to be standard? I've played guitar for 35 years and I still don't know how this came to be. You've been playing guitar for 35 years? Why the hell are you asking me? You have any idea how much dust is collected on this guitar back here? It's surrounded by junk. That should tell you something. Yeah, I only know how to play like 4 chords. I can only play Hooting the Blowfish songs. And the only alternative tuning that I know of is drop D, because back in the day when I was more into playing music, that was the 90s, and that was like big in the whole grunge thing. But I guess some lightning round questions are just me being asked to Google something for somebody. I'm the Ask Jeeves of the YouTube. My guess is that it was settled on because it made like fingering the chords easier. Oh, here's an article from Fender, they would know. Standard tuning, how EADGBE came to be. D, see it ends with D, and that was on purpose. Okay, so it starts here by talking about how like 4-stringed instruments like the violin and the cello and whatnot.
Ooh, make an equator train track on the moon. So the telescope and power station, etc. keep moving.
Are tuned with a series of ascending perfect fourths and a single major chord.
There you go, Sean. That's inventive.
The reason it's simultaneously musically convenient and physically comfortable. A conclusion players came to 100 years ago. 200 years ago. The aim was to create a tuning that would ease the transition between fingering simple chords and playing common scales and fret hand movement. To get more specific, it says tuning the 3rd and 2nd strings to a major 3rd interval made fingering easier than continuing a series of perfect fourths, which would have resulted in a 2nd string tuned to C and a 1st string tuned to F. This is all starting to go a bit over my head already.
Apparently didn't
it
hold
sounds
shift
like the
long
Dvorak
enough.
keyboard of musical tunings. I tried switching over to Dvorak keyboard years ago. It was a nightmare. Failed miserably. Also, I need to be practicing my guitar. Sticking with the musical theme, Fishtail asked, Mary Spender, a singer-songwriter and YouTuber, recently said that proof of work is a big distinguisher for artists in this AI world. Does this hold true to your channels? So Fishtail, I know exactly the video that you're talking about. I actually saw it the other day before you even asked this. So Mary's a fellow Nebula creator. I think we've interacted a few times here and there, but yeah, everybody go follow her if you like music content. She's amazing. But yeah, in her video, she was basically making the argument that now that we're in this AI slop era, basically, like, creators now have to basically show their work. Not just to prove that they actually did the work, but also because that's kind of part of the creator's story, and that's what people follow creators for. And
but technically, you can still cheat with that. Like, for instance, like, no matter how much I write on stream, couldn't the train produce the power somehow, too? Use, like, the friction of, like, the train tracks to, like, gain power or something like that? Interesting concept, Queen. I don't know. But yeah, even if you show your work like I do, right? I could still have like, literally everything on the left side of the monitor, or, you know, I could literally have a video playing of me doing it when I did it in the past, and then I'm just pretending to type on the keyboard. Like, there's a lot of ways you can fake it. If you want to fake it, you're going to be able to fake it. So, like, if someone still says, oh, look, you can see me writing it, it's like, yeah, but yeah, right? You could still be cheating. Solar panels on the side provide the power for both sides to function, sending the power through the tracks. The data would go through all the other rails to the tracks as well.
Phrasing, though. To me, it's more about, like, high-effort content versus low-effort content.
Yeah.
Slop has always been a thing. You know, as long as
always
there was
will
a
be.
monetary incentive to publish things on social media, or even before social media for that matter, you know, there have been people who are just trying to find ways to pick the low-hanging fruit and exploit it and, you know, just make money by doing as little as possible. That's never going away. You know, but now we live in a world where, like, ChatGPT can write a script in a matter of seconds, and then just, you could feed that into 11 labs to create a voiceover, and then use Midjourney or Sora or Runway to crank out a bunch of AI animations and images and stuff like that. Like, you can create a full video in a matter of hours. And of course, people are coming out of the woodwork to do that. So I think, I don't know, my philosophy has always been that you need to zig when everybody else zags, you know, or at least don't follow trends.
Yeah, you need to make trends, not follow trends.
You're never going to keep up with them. I don't know, my channel might grow a little faster if I did, but that's just my philosophy. So, in this slop era, I've been trying to move into more high-effort content, which of course takes more effort and doesn't always get rewarded, which sucks. At the risk of sounding salty, that Thai cave video that I did earlier this month, this is a good example of that. I put a lot of work into that. I'm really proud of it. I think it's actually a pretty great video.
It was a great video.
The comments seem to reflect that. A lot of people were really like, people are saying that it made them cry, you know. But it tanked, like hard. It like super tanked. But I've also made low effort content that's bombed as well. And I've done some videos that were just like rushed out.
Yeah, everything's all over the place.
It blew up. So I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years, and it's still a bit of a toss-up whenever I make a video. I just never.
It's a creative medium. All creative mediums are fucking building your house on sand.
You know, and let the chips fall where they may.
You know.
And if you throw enough chips out there, then maybe you can make a living doing it. That's kind of the way I've always done it.
That's why it's like I don't give a fuck about making a living. I just want to do this. Right? I don't need to make a living. I'm good. Right? That's not what it's about.
I would just rather make stuff I'm proud of.
Yeah, make what you're proud of, whether you think that's slop or not. If you're proud of it,
asked,
fuck it.
3 years ago, you made "We're shockingly close to a cure for aging. How much closer are we?"
Yeah.
Is this going to be like self-driving cars where we're always 5 years away?
Oh, it probably will be.
Yeah, I really haven't talked about longevity or the life extension
Tellurites.
in a while. I might have become a little disillusioned by it,
I don't know.
So
the things on the
so
end
the
of
problem with aging research is that it just takes a long time. You know, it's really hard to make that leap from like mice experiments to human experiments because we just live much longer.
I'll be right back.
I mean, will XYZ supplement help you to live to be 100 years old? You kind of have to wait 100 years to find out, don't you? I don't know about you guys. I probably don't have 100 years to wait on that. And it's like, how do you know that it's working until the person, you know, dies at an old age? It makes me think of, many of you have noticed my hairline is not spectacular. I do take hair pills, and whenever I say that, people are like, "Oh, does it work?" And it's like, well, how would I know? How would I know if it didn't work? I have no idea what my hair would look like if I wasn't taking them. And it does feel a little bit like self-driving cars and fusion, how it's always just, you know, in the future. So I had to kind of look, and there are a few different paths that there's been incremental advancements in over the last few years. So the first path that people have been working on is what they call cellular reprogramming. This is the kind of stuff that David Sinclair and his team at Harvard were working on. They got a lot of attention about a decade or so around this. But it deals with epigenetics, which is like the methylation that occurs around DNA that causes aging. Quick and dirty, the methylation is basically like a buildup of sort of junk particles that accumulates around DNA. And over time, it just kind of keeps it from performing properly, and it leads to aging breakdowns that you see in all various different ways in your body. So cellular reprogramming is basically using these things called Yamanaka factors that are named after a Japanese scientist that discovered these, and he won the Nobel Prize in 2012 for it, actually. But basically there's like 4 different Yamanaka factors, and they help to clear out the methylation around the DNA. The problem is that when this goes wrong, it can create tumors, because you're kind of reversing the cells to their pluripotent state, like a stem cell state. And cells in that state grow really fast, you know, like a tumor. So what they've been working on over the last few years is trying to sort of fine-tune the use of Yamanaka factors, to kind of find that sweet spot, the right combination and amounts of them, to clear out that methylation without leading to the growth of tumors and stuff. It's a hot topic. It's somewhat controversial in some circles. A lot of people, bioethicists and stuff, are very concerned because, you know, when it goes wrong, it goes very wrong. If it were to work, it would be amazing. Your body would literally rejuvenate itself and you would return to the body of a 20-year-old or something like that. But if it doesn't work, you know, you just become a giant tumor. So that's bad. Another path that people are working on is something called senolytics.
Hey, Cute Muffin, how's it going, bro? How are you?
Senescent cells. These are also referred to as zombie cells.
You
So
streaming today, brother?
Half dead, half alive cells that release these like aging-related chemicals into the body that causes inflammation and, you know, joint stiffness and all kinds of stuff. But a study that just came out this year, in March of this year, was testing 2 different senolytic agents working together. One of them is called dasatinib and quercetin. Quercetin. I'll never get it right. Let's just leave it with that. They shortened it to DQ, which is funny. It's not
the quercetin. Damn, what a name. Alright, not streaming. Wouldn't be, would have been pretty short if I had anyway. Gonna go bouldering soon. Nice. Hell yeah, Muffin.
So it's at least, you know, doesn't have a lot of side effects. And it says they suggest that DQ may improve cognition by modulating the SASP, SASP are senescence-associated secretory phenotype. It says, but however, there is not an appropriate control group. Data are preliminary and must be interpreted cautiously. So these are positive results, but it's mostly focused on, right now anyway, preventing Alzheimer's. Which also, I mean, like, aging aside, that would be an amazing thing to sort out. Other research has been in different supplements like metformin and rapamycin. There was a study that came out at the end of last year, September of last year, I guess about exactly a year ago, that was talking about metformin, where they were using it on monkeys, and it shows that it reaffirms that the drug can slow organ aging, including aging of the brain. It says that over 3 years, they experienced slower aging of the kidneys, lungs, and skin by up to 5 years, and slow aging of the brain by up to 6 years. In this actual scientific paper here, it says over a 3.5-year period, they found that monkeys treated with metformin reduced age-relating decline, with some exhibiting a 6-year regression in certain aging indicators. Now, the cool thing about metformin is it's a drug that's already out there. It's very cheap. It's a diabetes drug. A lot of people are already on it. There's not a lot of side effects. And there is something called TAME, which is targeting aging with metformin. It's a trial that's going on right now where they are testing this out in humans. So we got some results from monkeys in about, what was it, like 5 years? Maybe we'll be getting something like that in about 5 years on humans, which would be really cool. And the other one was rapamycin. There was a study that came out this year in June that showed that it could hold the same level of effectiveness as like calorie restriction. Calorie restriction has been something that people have used for a while. It's been shown, proven in rats and in experiments. But a lot of people, they're very skinny. They have a very calorie restrictive diet, and it's supposed to help with longevity.
Because the less times your cells replicate, the more DNA that you
So
have.
there's still some research going on with rapamycin. It is interesting to me how many of these...
The less fat you have to make, the less times your cells replicate. The less there is of you, the less they need to replicate.
I've been following it for a while. I'm not...
That would be my thought process on
Apparently
it.
it does have
It's
some
completely
pretty gnarly
unscientific.
canker sores, which I could use less of. So, I mean, no big blockbuster things really to report on, which is partly why I haven't really talked about it much, but things are inching forward, which is good. I could mention that there's people like Brian Johnson and other influencers that are doing all kinds of crazy biohacking stuff, like using blood transfusions from younger people. None of that is peer reviewable, that kind of thing. And I'm not going to stop anybody from experimenting on themselves. There might be things.
You look like the definition of non-binary.
But hey, I haven't covered that in a while. If you guys would like to see a deeper dive on that kind of stuff, just let me know. Alright, next up we got Donna Sawyer, who said, which of these would be easiest to accomplish? Big city life to small city life to big city life, cat lover to dog lover, or dog lover to cat lover? Please show your work. Look, this is a very subjective question. What's true for me might not be true for anybody else. But, I mean, as a lot of you guys know, I grew up in a small town, and I moved to a city. But this happened when I was young. I moved away for college, which is kind of an easy time to do that, because you're moving into student housing, and you don't already have, like, a life, built up yet. I imagine as an adult that would be very hard. Especially, I mean, just financially, right? Like, you're going from a place with a median home value of $50,000 to a place where it's $500,000. Like, that's a huge jump. You just don't have the equity to put into something like that. And the same is true for rent. Rent is less in a small town as well. Depends on where you are, though. That's very subjective. As far as cat lover to dog lover and vice versa, I used to be all about the cats. When I moved into this home, we had 2 cats. But when we moved into this house, we decided having a house might be good to have, a big dog for protection, that kind of thing. So we got a pity mix named Jake, who was the sweetest animal that ever lived to us. He scared everybody else, but I don't know. He changed me. He changed me from a cat person to a dog person. And stop the hate comments right now. Just stop it. I still like cats. Actually, no, that's engagement. No, cats. I hate them.
That's charming.
Another one.
I'm gonna go. Bye-bye. See you, Muffin.
We all of our old furniture.
Yeah.
And I'm not really in a hurry to have my new furniture get scratched all to hell. Which is why we had to replace the old furniture. I will say my old cat Falco, he would always greet me at the door, meow, 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 and all that stuff. He would jump up on the kitchen counter, and I'd walk over to him. And
Fuck this dude.
I would just,
Fuck you, Muffin.
A big hug, and he'd purr and all that. I do miss that. That was really sweet. But Jake was just such a great dog. He was an idiot, but he had the biggest dog heart, and he just wanted to be in the room with you, and he just wanted to be, next to you, and he just wanted to fill that room with his farts. I don't know. Jake changed me from a primarily cat person to a dog person. and now we have 2 little chicken nuggets running around the house. So, and that happened with no effort whatsoever. So I would say that was the easiest. I do still like cats, though. All right, next up, PJ Christensen, a noob. Welcome. What does the future of AI and psychology look like in relation to each other? Is AI merely a tool or a companion? AI and psychology. I'm actually very curious about this, honestly. So on one hand, like the erosion of human relationships is troubling and it's a concern for a lot of people. There's a rise that you're hearing of people having like relationships with AI characters and whatnot. And there are AI therapy apps that already exist, which sounds helpful. They have the access to all the info on the subject that exists out there. And I'm not a hater. I'm really not. I mean, like, we are in a bit of an AI backlash because it's just ubiquitous at this point. But I think we do forget sometimes that it does have very specific and tangible uses, especially when it comes to medicine.
Yeah,
like,
curing cancer.
To find patterns and compare it against.
What are you against AI? Oh, you're against cancer. Okay, you like cancer. You're against cancer research. That all makes sense now.
Helpful in diagnostic medicine. Like AI is being used to find melanomas and skin scans and lung cancers and X-rays and whatnot way faster and earlier than a human could, which is also super important to catch it early. So theoretically, why couldn't an AI help with mental health in the same way? Like recognize patterns in thoughts and behaviors, and then make recommendations. Maybe it's something that could find troubling psychological stuff earlier in a person's life and redirect them before they go too far that direction. Maybe there's even something out there that exists already that I don't know about where if you keep a journal, which I try to do on a somewhat regular basis, but if you keep a journal, maybe you could feed that into an AI and it could find patterns in thinking and thoughts and offer, therapeutic solutions. There's a thing that I've become really fascinated by. It's something called DebunkBot. Some AI researchers came up with this. It's basically an AI that's trained on conspiracy theories. And what's interesting is through testing and experimentation and whatnot, they've actually shown that it can help reduce a person's level of belief in a conspiracy. And what's interesting about it to me is that
the more you dig into it, the more you do the science on it, and not just believe retards.
A lot of human
interactions is retarded.
Tribalism, so somebody's trying to convince you
or
that
the whole
you
moon.
should believe in a conspiracy or even a political belief or whatever. It's easy to put them in the other camp and just dismiss what they have to say. And you're not really even wrong to do that. Everybody's belief is colored by their own biases. That's a human thing, But I think the reason the AI is proving to be so effective is because it is dispassionate. It's not colored with any kind of specific human bias anyway, and so it's a lot easier for people to just kind of like accept the facts that's given to them.
Callie!
And of course it can share its sources as well. So
what's
it's not
up,
just
Callie?
somebody saying that's not true. It's like, well, here's the receipts. So in that sense, I guess there is a little bit of evidence that AI could be used in a mental health capacity.
Did you finish your exercises, Callie?
But there's also the other side of it that we have to acknowledge, which is there have been stories of people actually taking AI advice and hurting themselves, even ending their own life.
Yup, the 14-year-old whose girlfriend Daenerys told him to kill himself so they could be together.
So it's something to be careful about. But I don't think it's completely
You tell me.
helpful. I think there
Marvel
could be some
Rivals,
opportunity
Callie?
for it out there. I'm sure there'll be lots of research into it in the coming years, and it'll be interesting to follow that. So we got one more question to get to, but before we do that, let's christen the new members and Patreon supporters with the power of Zoe. Here we go. New supporters include on Patreon, Bored to Death, PJ Christensen, whose question is answered. Usual going on with the geomagnetic field. All my life I've wanted to see the Aurora Borealis. Last year, early this year, as far south as central Oklahoma can see them. Today there's another chance. Solar maximum, weaker field.
One thing I improve on my writing,
yes,
will elevate beyond comprehension. You know, all other stories that were written. True, Callie, I believe it.
It's never gotten as far down as Dallas, and even if it did get this far down, the light pollution, I'm sure, would knock it all out. But yeah, the quick answer is yes. We are at solar maximum right now. This was from last year, at the end of last year, about this time last year. But yeah, the sun goes through 11-year solar cycles, and we are in solar maximum, which is also known as the time when all the sunspots are out. And you'll see some on social media. There's lots of really cool videos of like solar flares and coronal mass ejections that are really interesting to look at. But actually, remember last year we had that total solar eclipse. It was a good time to have a total solar eclipse because there were these huge prominences that were coming off the sun, and I actually captured it myself in the backyard, which was amazing. So you asked if there's a solar maximum, and you asked if the magnetic field is weakening. Number one, yes, we are in solar maximum. Number two,
Your clarity,
yeah.
Callie.
So as many of you
Make
know
sure
that these magnetic poles flip.
you are telling the
from
reader
time to time
exactly
throughout
what is
history.
going on.
They occur about every 450,000 years on average.
That is the biggest thing
and
you
it's
can
been
do
about
is
700,000
clarity.
years since the last one. And there is evidence that, like, you know, the pole moves around, and it's moved
Just like
quite a bit
one
over the last 10 years
sentence
or so.
at the end
So,
of
like, here's
everything
an
being
article
like, and this
talking
is what it
about going all the
actually
way back
is.
to 2003, so this is
Right?
this is not a new thing. But these transitions take a long time. Like it's saying right here that
I think that's
management
literally all you need,
2,000
Callie.
years at the current rate continues.
And
So
you're like, oh, I
it's got a
thought
little bit
so,
of time.
or
But it also
oh,
says here
now
that
I
there's
see it, right?
things
Those are
called
the reactions
excursions
you're
that
looking
happen,
for.
like 10 times more common than the full-fledged flip-flops. That's a lot of F's. It says in the last 50,000 years, there were many times when the field strength was a lot lower than it is today without reversing. The dipole may be stumbling, but it's far from a collapse. So to answer your question about like if the magnetic field is weakening to the point that like you could see a difference in the aurora borealis and stuff like that, probably not, because we're really talking over like geologic time scales here. Actually, one of my favorite things that I learned working on a previous project was that, you know, the ocean floor, especially in the Atlantic Ocean, as it's spreading, it kind of
But
like
invite
there's that
Queen.
ridge and it spreads and it moves out like
I
that.
think Queen's
You
here.
can see, they know how long it's been doing that because you can see differences in the way particles are organized due to the shifting magnetic poles. So yeah, this picture right here kind of shows what I'm talking about. There's literally
wanna make
stripes
food
in the
first.
ocean floor,
Okay.
magnetic stripes, where you can see how the magma, as it cooled, aligned
I'm
itself to the
playing
magnetic
comp.
field, and that field keeps flipping, and you can see stripes because of it. If you're looking at the magnetic field, anyway. So, is our magnetic field weakening in a sense? Yes, but not over so long a period of time that it's going to cause any actual problems or anything for us living here today. So if there's an uptick in aurora activity, it would be a lot more to do with the solar maximum, I would imagine. The good news is that most scientists don't think that this poses any kind of like threat to humanity or anything. It'll take place over thousands of years, so you know, plenty of time to adjust and whatnot. Really, the worst thing that is that like compasses are going to need to be recalculated, like 2,000 years from now. We'll be fine. So it doesn't look like it would weaken the magnetic field so much that it would endanger us.
Oh, it's up for season
The
4.5.
previous
I
didn't
want
result
to
in
try
mass
to get
extinctions or
diamonds.
anything like that.
Alright,
What has
no
caused mass
worries,
extinctions in the
Queen, no
past is
worries.
sudden climate change. So that's still the more urgent concern. On that note, a recent study in the journal Nature has linked 213 heat waves between the years 2000 and 2023 to specific carbon emissions from 180 fossil fuel and cement producers around the world. And 50% of those emissions came from just 14 companies. In no way will that be polarizing, because everything is polarizing now. I mean, that's what gets the clicks, and honest journalism feels increasingly rare. So when I want clarity on an issue, I turn to ground news. Look, if you get your news from
True.
only one source, you're
All right. World building questions. Oops, this is muted. Hold on.
Hey, Brandon here. This is the bonus companion video to my world building Q&A lecture. So, if you have been following
Buchi
along,
Bujiko Koada, yo.
my lecture series, which is now
Hi,
finished,
sweetie.
I'm recording
The
a
pager was
bonus
just
Q&A.
telling me
These
he's
Wow,
gonna
I don't know what his
questions about
name
world
is.
building
Thinks he'd be a
taken
perfect
from
match for us.
JBLH.
episodes that happened
Yeah.
in class.
Are you
Number
smoking?
one,
Who?
in your lectures, you talk about having
Why?
world building
What?
be
Why
a
are you
hollow
smoking?
iceberg. What are some
Maybe.
signs or
What?
signals
When
to
did
us
you
as
start
writers that we've gone off the deep
1980,
end with world
9-ish.
building and
So
our
you
iceberg has
have
become
been lying.
Similarly,
Makes sense
how can
to
we
do that
self-assess
phrase, the
our
burning
own work
pine
to see if the
scented
iceberg needs to be
hairspray.
Yes, I'll see it.
world building
Her
needs to be more
3-pack a day,
comprehensive?
voice.
Seems like a very fine line to tread, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. This is a fine line to tread. So let's start with the first one. How can you tell if you're world building, if you're putting too much world building into the book? I would suggest a two-phase litmus test. The first one is, are you spending so much time world building that you aren't actually getting to your writing? This is the first and most important of the litmus tests. When we talk about people spending too much time world building, really we're talking about they spend so much time up front that they never actually get to the story. Now, this can be totally fine if that is your goal, right? We're taking the focus that you want to be a professional writer. If what you want to do is spend 20 years world building the perfect world and then write some stories in it, I'm not going to stop you. There's nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to make a living as a science fiction fantasy novelist, you need to be releasing stories regularly. And so from that end, if you are spending so much time world building that you aren't able to hit your personal writing deadlines,
Queen's not going to play,
then,
Callie.
that's when it starts to be a problem. For instance, I would recommend that most authors be shooting for trying to complete one book a year. In a
No, she's playing Rivals. She's trying to get to Diamond.
One book every 2 years is acceptable. If you're going over about one book every 2 years,
I want Callie to play No Man's Sky
and
with
you're
me.
spending a ton of time.
No,
world
I didn't
building,
mean no.
I would recommend shifting some of that to writing. One of the things that's going to be a problem here is a lot of you new writers, you're not going to know where you actually need to spend your world building time until you get better writing instincts. The more you write, the more your world building time ahead of time on your book will become more effective. So build those writing instincts. See what you need. There is no wrong way to write a book. And some books have huge, dense, full of world building openers that are of the style the author wants them to be. That's not wrong. A steep learning curve does, cut out some of your audience, but it gains you other people that really enjoy that. Steven Erikson is a great example of this, but even there are lots of famous books that are very world-building heavy straight up front. Snow Crash does a ton of very bizarre, very interesting world-building things straight in your first chapter. You're thrown straight in, and you have to deal with this wacky, fascinating, interesting world. That's not wrong. In fact, Snow Crash is one of the great pieces of science fiction literature. And so at this point, your second litmus test is, for the goals that you have, are you turning off your reader because you're not giving them stakes, character, and story, and instead are you letting yourself lapse into wanting to put the world building in because you spent the time on it? That's your second big thing that people have a problem with world building too much. They spend so much time on the history that when it doesn't match the storytelling, you still just want to put in paragraphs and paragraphs of explanations. Again, if this is the story you're telling, it doesn't have to be wrong. But oftentimes that will turn readers off a little bit. They'll say, why does this connect? What's the point? The other side, if you're looking for your world building to be more comprehensive, well, generally your biggest problem here is going to be reader confusion. And I rely on early readers for this. They're reading the book and they're like, I can't pay attention to the characters because I don't know what questions to be asking about the magic system. I don't know if I'm asking the right questions. I'm just confused. And usually that's not what you want. There are certain types of stories, again, where you want people confused a little at the beginning, but you pair those with really dynamic storytelling to pull them through the confusion as you're relying on the realizations that come later to really build a connection between them and the
Guys, it gets good at 50 hours, okay?
And had to tell
the other half wouldn't get into the
pro
Way
writer from
Kings
amateur
because there were too
solely
many
based on world
characters.
building. What would the symptoms
Couldn't.
What would be the symptoms you're looking for? Excellent question. As I
I'm
said in
good
the
with
class,
a lot of characters.
Oftentimes you can tell a pro
But
from an
I've never
amateur,
read that
very
or,
quickly. The same way that you could tell a pro
Ice and
piano
Fire.
player
Song
from
of Ice and Fire.
an amateur piano player. Well, with this, there's a few little things I'd be looking for. The first would be, how many names are you throwing at the reader straight up? You usually want to keep proper names down a little in your openings. You want to focus on the character and their names. You don't want to hit us too much. Once in a while, it can be good for setting a tone and whatnot, but people's eyes will start to glaze over. And this can be one of your dangerous areas, particularly in a fantasy book. Throwing a ton of names and jargon and terms, unless you're shooting for that really steep learning curve on purpose, is one of those things that will make you stand out. The other sorts of things, well, you will look amateur if you look like you're trying to show off your world building.
He has bad
rather than letting
ADHD,
it
said
be
to
there
many
to enhance
characters.
the
Too
story.
many characters makes it hard to remember everyone
so
in the story.
excited
Yeah,
by
I
your
could see
world
that.
building that we have paragraphs and paragraphs of info dumps rather than a character doing something, then you have a problem. And what the pros are going to do, even if they have a really exciting magic system, there's a book called Spellwright, which is an excellent example of this, which is people creating spells. It's an excellent book that I recommend, and the opening scene is a character basically trying to debug a spell. The problem being he's dyslexic, and he's in class for writing spells, and they're actually physically written spells. It's a really cool, innovative magic system, but there's a character with a problem, and his personal limitations then lead to the part making the problem worse through no fault of his own, which immediately builds us.
He's also
sympathy
into
and
lit
rooting interest.
RPG.
It shows off the magic.
Lit RPG is good, man. I love it. It's basically
really good
what
opening for a magic
what Stoner
system
Girl
heavy
is.
first chapter. The reader who reads that will know very quickly if this is a good book for them. Whereas you
Like, it's got the
that
system,
with
it's got like
amateur,
the
and
computer
you'll end up with
like
this
interface kind of idea with the
long-winded sort of,
magic.
in the
but it's
dawn
also
of
got
time,
everything
there
else
was a
in
magic
there.
that was, and there's no characters to latch onto. There's this overwrought, overwritten opening that feels kind of purple, and it's just like a big barrier to getting into the story. That's one of the things.
That's what I felt about the
specifically
Wheel of
that
Time.
you would look at. Now, of course, the main things are going to
you
be
get it-
how well the reader, or
Get it
how well the
into
author
an
can
audio.
handle
I could
voice
probably get him
and
to
how
listen
well
to
they
it.
can
Yeah.
get across this world building through the way the character sees the world. That's a hybrid between character and world building, but it is, as I say in class, the grand skill of writing science fiction and fantasy is the ability to convey your world through the eyes of a character, so you don't even realize as a reader that the world building is happening.
Yeah.
Instead, you feel like you're getting character and plot. How
Yeah.
do you make your world's history relevant to the storyline? How do you make the history described in the books surprisingly relevant? I'm always impressed at how every bit of historical context given in your books ends up being crucial to the plot. Warbreaker is a wonderful example of this. Well, thank you. Again, so how do you make the history relevant? So your easiest way to make things relevant on that first question is to make them interesting to the characters in some way. The reader, if they can pick up on the relevance early on because it's important to a character, they'll pay better attention. And particularly if you're going to be using this history for important things later on, you want them to have paid some attention. And a lot of times what you're doing here is you're doing a bit of you're signposting that they should be paying attention for a reason different than the fact that there's a twist coming. You make the character interested in it. You make it their passion. You make the character ignorant about it. And the real point of the scene that the reader thinks is this is the two characters chatting about something, and there's a subtext of either like romance or argument or things like this, and they're paying attention because they're fascinated by that. And then the clues you have inserted about history become extra relevant later on. Where your character's focus is where your reader's focus should be. Usually, those things match up exactly, and if you're writing well, they will. But how do you make it surprisingly relevant? Well, this comes from understanding what you need to foreshadow, and a lot of times it comes from knowing what your ending is before you're writing or revising. If you are a discovery writer, it's okay. You get to that ending, and then you do a good revision where you say, okay, these are the key things that I need, that are crucial. How can I devise scenes early on that convey this information without looking heavy-handed? And it's that heavy-handedness that you really need to watch for as a new writer. Having the storyteller come on, and the point of the story, oftentimes the point of Wit's story is to motivate in a certain way.
I have to sprint tomorrow, and yes, I did exercise. Nice, Callie.
When something becomes relevant later on with Hoyd's story, and you're like, oh, I learned that history. That's really fun. I thought I was just learning about, Hoyd giving a pep talk. Find ways to make everything you're doing achieve more than one goal. And with these history lessons, what you don't want
Shadowboxing
is a
doesn't
history
raise my
lesson.
heart
You
rate
want a
anymore.
Fun and interesting dynamic scene where things are happening and people are excited. Another way to make these interesting is to somehow make them visual. This is why when Wit is telling the story of the Wandersail, he is using some light weaving. He knows that an audience needs something more to really bond to than just a story. And it can be as simple as throwing powders into the air, as I have him do. A lot of books will have, visual context in some way. It's the reason that Maui has tattoos in Moana, so that when a story happens, you have a visual representation of that story. They don't have to necessarily flashback. You've got a cool means of telling the story. Look for these sorts of things to keep people engaged and interesting when they're on the screen, and then pay them off. The more often you pay them off, the more people
That's
will want to pay
plays,
attention
songs,
later on.
dances,
All right.
books, poems.
I am working on a story as told by the spirit or god of the city in which it takes place, and the viewpoints from characters all different points in time. Very cool, very ambitious. I approve. Before they ultimately all converge in the main timeline. Okay, great. Some Cloud Atlas sort of stuff going on here. Do you have any suggestions for how to pull off non-linear storytelling using third-person limited storyteller for the narration? All right. So one of the things to be aware of is that readers will naturally bond to whatever they consider the main timeline most. And it'll be extra work to get them to care about the other timelines. And that's just something you have to overcome. Make sure that each of them has a hook that makes them distinctive, a narrative hook that is somehow interesting. And if you can, early on, start to tease that these things are going to be relevant to each other, every little bit of relevance the reader early on will latch onto.
Great example of this from Cloud Atlas is
even if it's something
scar,
as simple
the birthmark.
as Dalinar mentioning his knife again, the knife that was in a flashback, and be like, man, I like that knife. Right? Just to tie them together, to give that little hit of, oh, these are going to be relevant. And start that early. Start promising that convergence long before it happens so that readers subconsciously start to say, okay, this is all relevant. This is all meaningful. This is all important. You're going to have less of a problem with this style of story than you will with flashbacks, which might seem odd to you because they're all different characters, but readers early on are going to see this premise and be like, oh, I see what's happening. It's a cool, non-linear thing. And once again, people will self-select into liking this story as you open and kind of let it dawn on them what it is. And that's going to mean that the people that this story is for are going to keep reading. And if you can pay off for them, don't worry about paying off every story for everyone. Pay off for the people that are going to love the fact that you're doing a nonlinear narrative. And that's how you do it. You start to give these clues that things are going to come together. You're going to want to, while they're reading, they're really going to want to see things in one timeline have an influence on another timeline. You're going to want to see parallels. One of the stronger nonlinear narratives even is Doomsday Book by Connie Willis, in which one character goes back in time and is experiencing the bubonic plague while a modern pandemic is happening in the future. And the ways that the science fiction timeline deals with the pandemic versus the helplessness of the people in the past timeline gives us all of that thematic, both contrast and parallelism that we want in really interesting ways. And of course, most of the book is about the past, and so the future ones are very brief and don't overstay their welcome, and it works really, really well for that reason. It's an excellent example of doing this. So hopefully that will help you. I do think you'll have less trouble than you think because people will quickly pick up on what type of story this is, and they will bond to watching it all come together. That's going to be their progress.
Yeah.
The process of world building. How do you measure your progress on world building? Is it by word count, section? Do you write formally, or a note format? Do you set a deadline for your world building and then just let that pass, or would you carry on? So usually I work via a deadline for my world building. I say, okay, I've got this much time before I'm going to start writing. The thing to remember is, even though I'm a heavy outliner, I am generally going back to my notes guide a lot during the early parts of the book and writing a chapter, filling it out. If you've been following the progress of Ghostbloods on my weekly updates, you'll see that some weeks I only get a couple percentage points and other weeks I get the full 4 that I want. That's because I say, I'm diving back into world building for this week. I've written enough of a chunk that I know what I'm going to need later on. Let's go and make sure that's all in place. My world building is generally a mix of paragraphs explaining and bullet points, just giving a list. Early on, it's paragraphs. Later on, it turns into bullet points, which might seem reversed to you, but that is the way it happens. Is as I'm exploring the world, I'm kind of talking my way through it, and as it starts to click into place,
and it's
then
like
all I need
this,
is
this,
the bullet points,
this,
is all information.
this. Yeah.
I've already got the general feel. I just need reminders on some things. And so this is for a new book, by the way. What's my process like? Is it by word count? No, the whole thing does tend, all of my notes on character, setting, plot together, tend to be about 10% word count of what the final book will be. 100,000 word book tends to have around 10,000 words of world building. But that's not a hard, fast rule, and I don't look to keep that rule. I've just noticed that theme as I do it. So I don't look for a word count. I look for a, do I feel confident in this setting? And can I start writing? And when I hit a point where I need to build something more, and this is something really important that those of you who have world builder's disease, you won't be able to anticipate all the things that you're going to need. So it often is better to start writing and then hit, okay, I need this. Let's spend a little bit more time in my world building here. Just don't let it interrupt your writing too much. And I do that quite a bit. I'm like, all right, what's the theme for this? Let's jump back to my notes document, write out a few paragraphs so I have it later on. All right, I feel comfortable on that, back to the writing. How often should you describe the spice, quote unquote? If a character isn't changing scenery or locations much, how can you revisit a similar description without it feeling redundant? Is the lack of scenery change for that character to support practice in the first place, or is there a way to use the same principles without a physical description of the location? Again, there's no one way to do this, but I'm glad you're asking this question. It is a relevant question.
I would use names.
How often? Again, no rule here. What you want to do is remember that kind of pyramid of distraction. You want to start a scene by pulling the reader into that scene, either with characters launching like straight into a problem or something like that. If you start with dialogue, make sure you set the scene at some point. Every chapter should set the scene, even if it's in the same place. Have the character notice something different.
Yeah.
Or
otherwise,
whatnot.
shouldn't be its own chapter.
I have a lot of characters out in the mists in Mistborn, and each time I'll set the scene, I'll do it from the character's viewpoint. Today they're feeling like this, and the mists seem playful. Today the mists seem kind of dark and ominous because the character's mood is such. There could be anything hiding in there. At one time, the mists are lighter, and so they might describe it in one way. At another time, they're deeper and thicker, or there's certain lights. Basically, finding different ways to describe the same thing. Someone's in the same room all the time, use a few sort of clues, like there's a clock that's always ticking in the corner, and today that beat seemed to be to the song that he had been singing earlier, or today that clock ticking was really annoying, or whatever it is, so that you're reminding us of what the setting is. Set that scene, put the character in the scene, and then you can go through the rest of the chapter without doing a lot of the scene setting, except for occasional reminders of having the character interact with it. Interacting with the scene to pull us back into it is really handy. You'll see people doing this a lot in film as well. After there's a long conversation, they push out of their chair and they slam on the table, or they lean against the wall, or something like this. That is doing the exact same thing. It is pulling us out of the abstract into the concrete, reminding us that these aren't talking heads, that these are characters in a setting. And interacting with that setting is really just very handy. How often do you describe the spice? In Dune, you're talking about how the spice kind of sparkles in the air. I would do it any time that the character is pausing and looking across the setting. I might not describe the spice in detail every time. I might just throw it in a line, but I would include it in each of your setting details, just like in Mistborn. Every time someone's outside, they're going to describe the mist. And finding ways to just make this work and not feel too redundant is part of your job as a writer. Finding ways to set, you're going to have to write so many scenes that take place in a room with two people talking to each other. Practicing how to make that scene description interesting by seeing it through the character's viewpoint and mood for that day is one of the things you need to learn as a writer. So I'm glad you're asking this. And I would recommend that you just practice it. Focus on that and see what you can do. I wouldn't say the lack of scenery change for a character is poor practice. There are lots of great stories that take place in a single room. And so, Emperor's Soul is my award winner. And 90% of that story takes place
I couldn't
in
read
one
it.
room.
It was too long.
I'm finding ways to make that room evolve and change in order to keep it fresh and whatnot. But definitely
like
not more
190
practice to
pages.
keep someone in the same place. Just depends on the story you're telling. All right, last question. Is there a way to blend divine entities with mortals without making them feel disconnected from the primal instincts of the worlds or overpowered compared to mortals? A mix of Silmarillion and Narnia, for example. Well, it is definitely a thing that I am doing. Whether it's effective or not is your mileage may vary. I do a lot of this in Wind and Truth, in fact. So yes, there are plenty of ways to do that. One thing to keep in mind is motivations can cross all sorts of boundaries of alien biology and divine natures and things like that. If somebody cares about something that's relatable, well, it won't really matter who they are or what their power are. That care, that passion is going to pull us through. If someone is prevented from doing something they want to do, we know what that feels like, even if some sort of divine figure is doing it. Now, there is a reason why the gods in the Cosmere feel a little more like Greek gods and a little less like omnipotent divinities, and I'm kind of in between those two. More than a Greek god, less than an omnipotent divinity, and that is because I do want to make them relatable, and I do need them to be viewpoints now and then. But I use them sparingly because I
got a
do
video
think
of a
it
guy
is
playing the hang
to
drum in a
get someone to bond
tunnel.
to
It's
someone
really
who is
impressive to
doing
me
that
as the
much.
other instrument he's using at the same time.
Capable of that much. You can absolutely do this. There are stories that do this. It depends on the conflict. It depends on what your theming for that viewpoint is. And I guess my answer to you is yes, it's very possible, but there are as many ways to do this as there are authors who might try it. So you're going to have to find your own method of doing this and ways to make rooting interests and to make people fascinated by these characters. And you might just use prose to do that. A very distinctive and interesting
A buddy of
prose
mine
might
told
be the
me
method.
that he blew
Or
a
you
tranny
might
in his
make,
car, and I called
use
him
the
a faggot,
Superman
and he was
problem.
like, nah,
What
man,
makes
my
Superman
transmission.
interesting? The things he can't do. What are the overpowered individuals incapable of doing?
Nice,
That
Mike
might be
and
for your
cheese,
story.
Harry.
So you could go either direction on those. So there you are. Those are your world building questions. Thank you so much. We have one more of these videos that we are prepping, which is going to be the nature of publishing and the bonus video on that. And then we will wrap up this series for now. So, hey, thank you so much for your questions, and I hope that was helpful.
Hell yeah. All right. No idea what that thing is in his right hand is. So I want to make a new thing. So we want to get rid of this. I'm going to bring this in. Remove this. Fuck. Okay. I have no idea how to do this. Maybe we just swap them? Like... Maybe like that? So we just have this here? Yeah, interesting, Sean. And then we can have the video, and then I won't have to worry about what angle I'm at. And this will just be a lot easier to do, and then we can see whatever's on the page here. I just gotta make sure I know where I need to be. Alright, let's get on with it. Another day of drawing.
Priestley, welcome to Archery Tours Online. Today, this is the fourth in my series of drawing videos for absolute beginners. Today, we're going to combine all the ideas from the previous videos into this one to produce a final drawing. We're going to be concentrating on depth, on curves, and on creating lines and tone. So, let's make a start. Come on. We're going to be using 3 pencils, HB, 2B, 8B. If you haven't got these pencils, as long as you've got 3 different pencils, it will work. So don't fret about it. Now we're going to concentrate on what we did in the last few videos, drawing curves, moving the wrist, flicking, creating tone by varying the pressure that you put on with the pencil. You see, as I've done here. So we're going to combine these 3 ideas together to create our still life. Now the first thing we're going to do is to create a little pot. Now you'll notice when I draw the pot, I'm drawing the top part of the pot curved upwards. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I want to make it look as though I'm looking up at the pot. Now this means you need to understand something about eye level. If you don't understand anything about eye level, check out the little video. You can see the link to it comes up at the top of the screen now. I've drawn 3 straight lines. These are going to be for my brushes. Now this is not a particularly interesting design, but I want to draw them like this to show you the difference that we will get in the drawing. So you will do a more interesting overlap than they'll look more interesting if you did that. Now, I'm going to draw basically a decorator's brush. Now, using that centre
I have
line is
no idea what the
really
fuck
important
this is.
because I can use that to try to ensure that both sides of my brush are more or less equal. Okay, don't be too precise about it. You know, it doesn't have to look like a photograph, but it does have to be reasonably correct.
What are we drawing?
Otherwise, it won't work. Now, you'll
At first I
notice
thought you
the
said a
curves are
pot.
again curving upwards, so that I'm beginning to look up at my brush, which is what I want.
What
Now, drawing the
brush?
hairs of the brush, I'm going to just use a broken line. We've used this before along the top to suggest the brush. If you use a continuous line, it doesn't work quite so well. Now, I'm going to draw the other brush. This is going to be more like a watercolour type brush here. You see I'm using the curves. Notice how my hand and wrist keeps changing. You know, you must move your hand around if you're going to draw anything. I'm using the centre line, as you can see, and I'm flicking to create the hairs on the brush at the top, just suggesting it at the moment. Now, all this is with my HB pencil, and I'm drawing it quite lightly because if I make a mistake, I can always correct it at this stage. You should always try to do that, you know, correct it at this stage. It's much easier to correct now than it is later on when all the tone and details on. Okay, we get the rest of this brush done. Again, I'm flicking upwards and using the broken line to suggest the end. It's more of a flat type brush here. Okay, put the background in, and I'm now going to use my HB pencil and add some tone. Now, I'm adding tone by using line. Now, we've done this in previous videos, as you can see, using the line to suggest the tone, as you can see here. You'll notice also that as I'm doing this, I keep going over sections just to darken them slightly. This brush is the furthest away of the three. Now, even though when you look at it in reality, there doesn't appear to be very much difference between them. In the drawing, if you make the one at the back slightly lighter in tone, it will look as though it's behind the other brushes. This is why we've got the three brushes separate and not overlapping, just to make this crystal clear. I'm just adding a little bit more tone to this now, as you can see, a few lines here and there, making the brush look a little bit more three-dimensional, but you get the impression I'm looking up at the brush. The brush bristles on the brush, again I'm using that flicking line going up and down, up and down. Don't be too precise, don't go right to the edge there. Remember, you are suggesting a brush. You are not trying to create a photograph of a brush. Okay? People do get obsessed with making their drawings look like hyper-realist photographic drawings, but then they look like everybody else's hyper-realist photographic drawings. No character, you see? No individuality. So if it's not perfect, it's wonderful. It's your drawing. Be proud of it. So we've got to finish off this little sketch here. Now, because I'm doing this in an HB pencil, it's coming out very lightly, and I may well come back to this towards the end of the drawing and adjust the tones. You should always draw and adjust as you go along. Keep comparing and contrasting. I'm now using my 2B pencil, using the curves again. Now you'll notice with this that as soon as I start drawing this, I'm starting putting in the lines. Because I'm using a darker pencil, it's a stronger tone. It already looks as though it's in front of the brush that I've already drawn. You see, so just by using a different strength of pencil, a darker pencil, you can see the difference. Using line down here, you'll notice those lines. There's a subtle change, if you notice, goes from being curved at the edge to being straight in the middle. And that will help to suggest the roundness of that part of the brush. Now, that part of the brush, that curved bit, it's actually called the shoulder. I don't know whether you know that, but it is. Using the flicking technique to get the brush, you see? Flick up, flick, 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 flick. That's
Do
what
pretty
you've got
nails?
to do.
Thanks.
Add a little bit of shading
Thanks, Callie.
here. Don't be too precise with that. If you try and draw the brush coming back the other way instead of flicking upwards, it doesn't look the same. You see, there's a bit more vigour to it when you flick upwards. So we'll just add a little bit more tone to this. We'll come back and adjust this later on. I'm going to do the same now around the edges of the pot. I'm just outlining this. You see, I'm just darkening the tones around the edge. Now I'm using a 2B pencil for this. I'm not doing the bit in the middle because that's going to be even stronger because it's slightly closer to us. So I use my darker pencil. Notice here the curves. I want to suggest that the rim is curved, so I use curved lines. If you use straight lines, the lines will tell us that the rim is straight. We don't want to do that. Lines tell stories. You see here, the lines are vertical. I'm just going up and down like we've done before in the previous videos. And this tells me that the surface is vertical. You see, lines tell a story. So the angle of the lines is really important. Notice here the lines I'm pressing on very, very much lighter because this is going to be the light side of the pot. You see how it's working there. Right, I'm now switching to my 8B pencil. Now, you may choose to use something like a 4B, which probably would be better because it's not quite so much of a contrast. My 8B pencil is really going to contrast with what I've already drawn, which will make things really stand out, which is what I want you to notice. Now you'll notice here I'm just putting the shading on down the sides there we go, okay, and you'll notice this, because it's an 8B pencil, is very, very much darker than the other two pencils. So again, it's looking as though it's in front of the other pencils. Now we're just going to put the basics in, again that flicked broken line, flick, flick, flick for the hairs of the brush, you see, flick, flick, flick. This is a big sort of flat type brush there, and we'll just put a little bit more shading on here. We're going to come back and adjust the edges of these brushes later because we've just got the basics in there at the moment. Now continuing with my 8B pencil, I'm just doing the curves. Now watch those curves, you see how they become straight in the middle, okay? I'm pressing on quite hard now, and then gradually I'll stop pressing and press lighter and lighter and lighter. You see the idea? Okay, you can vary all the tones. You can do a whole of this drawing, in fact, just using one pencil, providing that you vary the tone. Now, we've got some strong outlines on this, which we're going to get rid of later on, but you'll see how that develops.
Oh, man.
I'm just going to strengthen some of this area here. As you can see, this is working now quite nicely. So up and down with the darker pencil. Put a little bit of shadow on here just to suggest the 3D elements. Now the background, I'm just going back to my HB pencil, and I'm using exactly the same technique I used in the previous video when I drew water. You see lines close together in the background, getting wider apart as they come towards you. Helps to create distance. Now, going back to my
You can barely see that in real life, a little on paper or on the camera.
Some areas around here, and I'm going to just work a little bit more on the brush in the background to make it slightly stronger in tone. You see, I'm comparing and contrasting. See, the contrast between this brush and the darker brush is a little bit too much at the moment, so I need to darken that, but I'll come back to that later. Now, I'm switching to my 2B pencil, and I'm just adding some shading over the top of this to make the contrast a little bit more subtle. You see the idea? So just darkening this down a little bit now. So we've got a little bit more subtle contrast between the two. Now, you'll see here I want to get rid of some of these outlines. So the shading is beginning to develop so that the outline begins to disappear. We want to try to get rid of outlines if we possibly can, because your drawing will look more realistic if you can get rid of outlines. Now, I'm going to use my HB pencil again, just darken this down a little bit more. You see here, just as it goes into the pot, because you can get a lot of shadow in that area just there. So I'm going to try to darken it a little bit more. You see what I'm doing? I'm going to do the same here, this with my 2B pencil. Now you see this section here, I'm just darkening it just as it reaches the pot, and it creates now an edge. The pot has got an edge there, not an outline, and that looks more convincing. It makes that brush look as though it's actually gone into the pot, which is what we want to see. We're going to look at this side now. I need to make some adjustments on this, but we're going to use my 8B pencil. As I say, you can probably use a lighter pencil, but I'm doing this so you can see clearly the contrast between the different pencils. You'll notice again I've darkened a little bit where it touches the pot itself, so it creates an outline.
Guys, am I a genius? Did I do it?
Sorry, it creates an edge, not an outline. Darkening this area by the bristles, you see, makes the bristles look much more commanding, much more dominant. I'm just going to strengthen the shadow down this side here with my 8B pencil. You can see here, just going down there, strengthening it up. You see, one little tip, if you screw your eyes up now, screw your eyes up and look at the drawing, you can see it in terms of light and dark. So you can then see which bits need to be made lighter or which bits need to be made darker to work. Now you'll notice my middle brush is a little bit too light still, so I'm going to darken it, add a little bit more tone to it. I'm also going to adjust this brush because the side of this brush isn't quite there yet, so I'll just make adjustments to that. So you've got to keep looking now, looking carefully, make these sort of minor adjustments. Major adjustments should have been made earlier on, but minor adjustments like tone and such like here, just darkening these edges at the bottom there so it creates that edge. You see, I'm just bringing that out a little bit because it needs to be a little bit fatter on the shoulder of the brush there. That's better. Okay, make that look a little bit more curved. Now, we'll just touch up a little
Sean.
bit more
It's about that time, isn't it?
bottom of that centre brush in a second.
Almost
as well,
about
because
that time
this
for
needs
me,
to be
too.
strengthened. This one again needs to be strengthened here. Just keep looking, comparing, contrasting all the time. Just touching up. the
See you on
little
late
sections,
tonight. It's 1
making
a.m.
it look
Yeah.
a little bit more convincing. That's what you're
Oh.
trying to do. Just do a little bit more, as you can see on this brush. This is with a 2B pencil. Now just making that, strengthening that tone there and these edges just to make them look a little bit more convincing. Now you can clearly see that brushes look as though they're in front of each other. This is done by contrast of tone. This is what you need to do in your drawing. I've exaggerated the effect here, but you can see what I'm trying to do. I hope you've done a great drawing.
I don't know,
Good
what do
luck
you
with the
guys
drawing.
think? Does it
I'll
look
see you
like
in the
it's
next
3D
video.
at all? It looks a lot
Thank you for
different in the
watching our
camera than it
tutorials
does
online.
on the
I
paper.
hope you've really enjoyed
Looks a lot
the
better
video
on
and
camera.
learned lots.
Looks fucking
If you
horrible in
have,
real life.
perhaps you could give the video a like. If you would like to subscribe, then check out my YouTube channel, which you can see on the bottom of the screen here. If you would like to support the making of these videos, then please have a look at my Patreon channel, where you can get
Jesus
interesting
fucking
rewards
Christ. Holy
in return for
shit.
your patronage. That would be wonderful. Thank you again for watching.
Let's go check him out.
See you
Look at
in the
this
next
guy.
video.
Give him some likes. Give him some love. See you next time. Have a good one, Sean. Have a good night. We're probably gonna peace
Hello,
out
my
here
name is
now,
Paul
guys.
Crazy. Welcome to our channel.
But yeah, that's our picture for today. Definitely looks a lot better on the camera. But we could probably still use like a little bit of like something like this. bristles are pretty fucked, though. But, I mean, hey, it's a used brush, right? I mean, it's the essence of it, right? And that's kind of what matters, right? It's not going to be as good as his. He's a fucking goddamn professional. This is like my 8th drawing, right? So, that's very important to it. But I think we did a good job, so that's all that matters, right? Just practice makes perfect. I just got to keep doing the lines. Like, I'm just so bad. I got to get more I got to find my other pencils, too. Like, it's crazy. But, 'tis what it is, right? So, as always, guys, thank you for hanging out and sticking around and, you know, being you. So remember, if you can't say fuck you to your friends, who can you say fuck you to? Fuck you! And as always, we will be back again tomorrow for all the fun and excitement of the Stram. Tam, Stram, Dam, Bam, ma'am. Well, I mean, Coffee raided me earlier. Apparently, they're back on again, so we're gonna raid them back, because that's reciprocation right there. So get your Wii U's ready. Let's go.
Welcome, Raiders. How was stream? Egg salad? It sounds delicious, I will be honest.
Want me some egg salad. Alright, see you guys.